Hello everyone, it's Tony here from Locks to Reads. October has begun, September is over, so I thought I'd do a very quick video talking about what books I read in September. I read 11 books in September, 6 novels, 2 history books, what else was there? 2 books about the theatre and 1 book about logistics in World War II. Let me start with the novels, because they are all by the same author and they are all part of the same series. I read 6 books, so I read Summer and Autumn of Anthony Powell's A Dance to the Music of Time. Those 6 novels are At Lady Molly's, Casanova's Chinese Restaurant, The Kindly Ones, The Valley of Bones, The Soldier's Art, and The Military Philosophers. The first 3 are set just before World War II, and the second 3 are, well, there's some time jumps, and the second 3 are set during World War II and up until the end, and the demobbing of the main character, Nicholas. I'm loving The Dance to the Music of Time. I can't recommend it enough. It is 12 books. We have now finished 9 of them. So winter is coming. Sorry, I couldn't resist that joke. Is it even a joke? The writing is superb. It's funny. It's philosophical. It's an insight into society, admittedly mostly from a privileged point of view. The main characters are mostly quite posh, down to middle class. But the 3 war books are a great insight into, I think, sort of the, I'm going to say vibe, which isn't quite the correct word, of Britain during World War II. And I'm looking forward to reading the last 3. In fact, I'm in that state of mind you get into sometimes with a book series or a book where you kind of don't want it to end. The last 3 were published in the 1970s. I don't know where what era they cover. Obviously, the war is finished by the end of The Military Philosopher, so I'm assuming it's going to be the 50s and maybe into the 60s. They are thinly disguised autobiography. Anthony Powell. The characters in the books are some of them are obviously people like Montgomery. General Montgomery is definitely one of the characters in the war books, but there are others where they are based on his friends or his family, and I mean, what's going to happen, I think, is I'm not going to talk about the individual books in much detail. I'm going to save it until we've finished the series, and hopefully Alyssa, who is Nerdy Nurse Reads on YouTube, and I will do a video talking about the series as a whole. And I hope by the end of the time we finish doing that, you will find yourself wanting to read it. 12 books sounds like a lot, but they aren't long books. They're about 250 pages each. And the writing is such that you kind of sway through them quick and easy. The only one I slightly struggled with was the first one, which is sort of mainly the school one. Once they're sort of properly grown up, I think I didn't have much of a problem with the rest of them. But yeah, I recommend it. And reading the trilogy of war books made me want to read 2 other series things. There's Evelyn Waugh's, is it Swords of Honor series? I have never read an Evelyn Waugh book, so that's a gap that at some point is filled. And there's also Simon Raven's series, the name of which I'm temporarily forgetting. But first, let's finish The Dance to the Music of Time. Next, I read Shakespeare by McBean and Theatre Writings by Kenneth Tynan. That was my sort of Shakespeare reading prose thing. Again, that's made me want to do something that I originally planned years ago, and I mean years and years ago, which is to read each Shakespeare play and watch. Many moons ago, my parents bought me for Christmas and my birthday a big box set of DVDs of the BBC's complete works of Shakespeare series that they did, well, complete plays of Shakespeare that they did in the late 70s into the 80s. And my original plan was to read one of the plays and then watch that BBC production and or another production. I've got a few other productions of various Shakespeare plays on DVD. And that's now a plan I intend to do. When I start that plan is dependent, I suppose, on my own arsedness, for want of a better word. But those did make me want to get back into my Shakespeare reading. I'm going to see with a friend of mine this weekend, Born with Teeth, which is the play about Marlowe and Shakespeare at the Wyndham Theatre with Ncuti Gatwa. The Doctor Who connection being one of the reasons why I was keen to go and see it. So that was the Shakespeare, and then there were 2 English Civil War books. Oliver Cromwell and Elizabeth. There was The Making of Oliver Cromwell by Ronald Hutton, which is the first part of a biography of Oliver Cromwell, which takes him from birth to the end of the first English Civil War, where basically from a pretty much nobody to a key figure on the national stage. There is a volume 2 which is called, I think, what's it called? Oh yeah, Oliver Cromwell, Commander in Chief, which I'm going to read this month. But I'll go into my October reading plans in a separate video. Then that book is excellent. I like Ronald Hutton as a historian anyway. He does some great lectures that you can find on YouTube on various things. His specialism seems to be like the English Civil War and paganism, sort of ancient and modern. And he's very honest. I've said this before, actually. I think he reminds me of Mary Beard in the sense that they are very honest about how little is known about certain things and how much is made up by guesswork, by probablys, possiblies, maybes, or little leaps of knowledge based on, I suppose, educated guesswork. And as Hutton points out in The Making of Oliver Cromwell, we know nothing virtually about Oliver Cromwell's life before he was 30. We know little things, we know tiny amounts, but in terms of what he believed up to a certain point, we don't know anything. Or we're making educated guesses. I think it's the first biography of Oliver Cromwell I've read for a long, long time. I read, I think, one when I was at university, and I can't remember anything about it because I was at university a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. But yes, I would say it's a good starting point for knowing about Oliver Cromwell. I'm going to read some other Oliver Cromwell biographies because I'm working on a project that I've mentioned before. But this was the one that I read this month. I don't know why I'm sitting here belligerently folding my arms, by the way. I'm not belligerently doing it, I'm just folding my arms. Seems a very weird pose. Say hello to the mess, carry bag, etc. there. Anyway, moving on to I think it's the last book I read in. Oh no, it's not. There's one more. The other English Civil War book was The English Civil War: A People's History by Diane Purkiss. This is a history of the Civil War from its sort of just pre-origins through the Civil War and out the other side. It's not chronological. Well, it's sort of chronological, but it does also sort of break down into subject matter areas. Something like there's a chapter on children. There's a chapter on, but then there's a chapter on the Battle of Naseby. There are chapters. It's sort of vaguely in chronological order, but occasionally there's a chapter about a specific. There's a chapter on the problem of Christmas. I found it really interesting, a really interesting read. It gave me a nudge on some of the things I knew about the English Civil War that I'd forgotten about, but there was lots of information there that I had no idea about. I think if you know nothing about the English Civil War, this wouldn't be a bad place to start, because I think she does a good job of explaining the different motivations that different people have at different times for getting involved or not getting involved in the English Civil War. The arguments that were had, the reasons for fighting weren't necessarily all the same. Families were split. Towns declared against the king, for the king. It's a complicated picture that I think Diane Purkiss does a very good job of making comprehensible. Also, it has a great further reading section. So if you find a chapter that you're really fascinated by, it gives you a guiding point for more reading. So yeah, I think I would say this is a good book to go. The other thing that's good about it is it's full of big chunky quotes from contemporary sources, from diaries, from letters, from speeches, from reports, from pamphlets. I mean, the English Civil War is a great era for political pamphleting. Milton wrote some, but other less well known now people. It's also good on the Levellers and the Diggers and their place in the situation. There's a little bit of talk about the Putney debates, which I think are fascinating to read about, which was when the more radical elements of the Cromwellian army put some of their spokesmen up against Cromwell, and I think it was Hutton on their side, to discuss what was the army wanted from the new world, the new society, the world turned upside down. So there's lots of quotes, and it's brilliant for that. So I really recommend Diane Purkiss. It's probably my favourite book I read this month. Actually, it took me a lot longer than this month to read, but that's because I'm not reading properly at the moment. I use properly in inverted commas because everybody's reading it properly. I'm too easily distracted. I'm too much doom scrolling, too much reading 5 pages, putting it down, going on something else, and it's nothing to do with the quality of the book. Nothing at all. It's to do with my brain, the world as it stands at the moment, and how easy it is for me to be distracted by anger. Yeah, anger is not a good thing to feel, unless it is firmly directed. In which case, as a terrible person once said, anger is an energy. But you have to be careful not to let it burn everything behind you as you go. And then the final book I read, and possibly the most disappointing one of the month, was The Liberation Line by Christian Wolmar. Now that's about the logistical challenges faced by the Allies landing in Normandy, and how railways were key to solving those problems. Now, the book purports to be sort of a story of the British and American contribution to this, but it is almost, I would say, 80% America, 20% Britain. Britain's almost like the guest star. Now, I know in terms of resources, America was top dog in Normandy, but the book kind of says, oh, they were great, but the British were doing stuff, but every time it happens, it's like there's like a page, half a page about what the British are doing, and then 25 pages about what the Americans are doing. Now, I don't know whether that's because the sources that Wolmar had to refer to are much more extensive in the case of the Americans, and therefore you can tell these stories in more depth, or not. My feeling is that this is a book written for Americans. Now, Wolmar might not agree with me on that, but he kind of gives the game away by using the default language of the American armed forces. For example, there's a bit where he says something like hospital trains, or brackets, what the British called ambulance trains. Which, if this isn't a book aimed at the Americans, you'd surely do it the other way round. So that's disappointing. We do get some good credit for the Bailey Bridge, and bridging seems to be the main thing he talks about when he talks about the British contribution. But it's all very sort of throwaway in comparison with the detail in which he goes into the American side of things. Secondly, his general history, he seems to have relied for general historical background to D-Day on Max Hastings, whose book came out 25 years ago, and has been superseded, I think, by a lot more contemporary authors who have criticised Hastings' bees in his bonnets, particularly his general tendency to be down on the British Army and up on the Germans. He's not the only one that does that, by the way. There's a whole swathe of World War II historians that do this. It's I think I've heard it referred to as Tommy Don't Fight, which is provably wrong. So in this book, it's the conservative British Army with a small c. He's hero worships. Let me use a simpler word. He hero worships Patton. He's virtually uncritical about General Patton, whilst being incredibly critical about Montgomery in the 2 or 3 mentions he gets. In both cases, he's bad for doing. He's either panicking or which is not what he was doing in the bit where he's said to be panicking, and in the situation about Antwerp, there are issues about Antwerp which I kind of agree with, but it's just this kind of like, it does have that. It feels like a book which was written which should have been written 25 years ago, historically background wise. Even though there's lots of really good information in it, it's a story worth telling. But I found it really disappointing. I can recommend. I'd say read it. I said read it, particularly if you're an American, because it's all American. God, that sounds so bitter. Ooh. But that's what disappointed me. If you're going to tell the story, I think I have a minor amount of skin in this game, because one of my granddads was a Royal Engineer and was in Germany rebuilding bridges on roads and railways into 1946. I don't think he was demobbed until 46. My other granddad, by sheer fluke, was also in Germany until 46. He was teaching British soldiers how to lay bricks, so that when they went home they had a skill. And I believe they were also sort of indirectly teaching Germans how to lay bricks. So the sort of absence, and it's odd because there's a chapter in the paperback which is a kind of like response to some of the letters and things he got, and that's almost entirely about British soldiers. And there's a list at the end of the soldiers in the British Railway bits that died in service. But when you actually read the bulk of the book, we're almost not there. And again, I said the vast quantity of this work was probably done by the men, especially in the south of France when the southern invasions happen. But the detail, the weird, as I said, it might be the sources problem, and it's hard to tell because there is no bibliography, because this is popular history. Publishers are afeared of bibliographies, so you don't know what books he relied on for the general historical background. But he mentions Hastings, he mentions Beaver, and he mentions Carlo d'Este, who is very anti-Montgomery and very pro-Patton, and that's what I mean by that sort of historical sort of so the book has a sort of central thing about the railways and the engineering, and then has the surrounding skin of general history about what happened, how the D-Day landings happened, what happened afterwards, the Battle of the Bulge, etc. And you don't know what he might have been reading more contemporary books about D-Day, but the only ones that get quoted are Max Hastings and Beaver. So I am quite hard on Max Hastings on this channel. I'm sure he would be distraught to discover I feel that way. But I read his book. He's a very good military historian. His book on the Falklands War, because he was there as a journalist, it's a joint book with somebody else, and I can't remember who the other one is now, is excellent. His book on the Korean War is excellent. His book on the Vietnam War is excellent. But he's got a real blind spot on World War II about the British Army and about the German Army, and it's just irritating. And this book irritates, as you can probably tell by my response here, that Christian Wolmar's book irritated me. That's the only thing I could say. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads because I think the general core of the book is great, but actually I should have given it 2 for personal irritation. I'm probably being harsh, and I'm probably being unfair. But you can only react to a book in the way you want to. You can react to it. It can only affect you the way you're affected. So there. So that was my reading in September. It was mostly good. It was I Danced to the Music of Time, great. Diane Purkiss's English Civil War book, great. Ronald Hutton's book on Cromwell, great. The Shakespeare books, both fascinating. Well, the Shakespeare book and the theatrical writing book, both excellent. Kenneth Tynan's theatrical writing, by the way, is if you want to write reviews, I recommend you read that book because it shows how you can write critical. You can write reviews in a literary way, in a way that reads well, that isn't just I quite like this, which is what I do. I'm terrible. My reviews are often terrible, as you can probably see from this video. But yeah, I that's September's reading. I'm going to do a video tomorrow, or yeah, probably tomorrow, on what I'm going to read in October. Theoretically, as we know, my plans are often not stuck to. But this has gone on for long enough. 22 minutes. Have a good one. I hope the rest of the week treats you well, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye bye.